Hello everyone, thank you for joining. Today we're going to discuss the Harried leisure class by Staffan D. Linder, a Swedish economist and the president of the Stockholm School of Economics from 1986 to 95. His book explains the concept of free time is an illusion and how higher incomes increase the scarcity of time. Our agenda for today include going over the scarcity of time as an economic resource, surpluses and shortages, the consumption mindset, advertising, and future economic growth. I know this feat sounds super academic, but I want to go over this material in a more philosophical and casual manner. Time as an economic resource. Many of our ancestors had an optimistic view of how we would be today, that we would gradually be freed from toil and starvation to devote ourselves to cultivation of mind and spirit. We would have all the materials we could possibly need and want, and the world would be full of fine arts. Unfortunately, we may never reach a point of meeting all of our wants, as will later be explained. Time can't be accumulated like other economic resources like stock, so we must choose to allocate our time to different activities, to find balance for maximal marginal utility. The author gives the example of coffee. Such pleasures as a cup of coffee or a good stage play are not in fact pleasurable unless we devote time to enjoying them. So you note that consumption takes time too. Obviously, if you don't have the time to drink coffee, having coffee, unlimited amount of coffee, provides no utility. Therefore, time follows similar economic laws. Limited supply of time means increased demand. The increasing scarcity of time. Economic growth entails a general increase in the scarcity of time. Higher incomes mean higher cost of leisure. So the more that we get paid at our jobs, the higher the cost of leisure will be. The concept of free time is misleading because it suggests a failure to realize that consumption time is a scarce commodity. The closest to the concept of free time we have would be in poor countries where passivity is kind of forced upon them. There's no choices to consume or money to consume. There's no time for productivity or added pleasure. Time can be classified into 5 different categories. Working time, spent in specialized production. Working time determines the income level of the individual. It affects both the supply and demand for time on other activities. Personal work, maintenance of goods in one's body, example, sleep and hygiene. Consumption time, culture time, cultivation of mind and spirit, and idleness, passivity and slacks. This means time spent without other consumption goods, example during economic depressions. Time surpluses and shortages. When incomes are low, there is more free time at people's disposal. With rising incomes, people voluntarily choose idleness. And when there's higher incomes, there are fewer slacks and times that will be tolerated, and the pace of life quickens. Simply, when incomes are lower, time is less scarce or of less value. When there's higher incomes, when you're getting paid more, it means your working time's more valuable, but also all the other times, all the other 4 categories are increasing in scarcity and value. Therefore, it's more important on what we decide to consume. As examples of time surpluses, you can look in poor countries where time is a difficult concept to translate into the languages of these cultures. Also, underemployment, when a reduction in working time does not reduce production, like begging. We also have time shortages, which is more like American modern culture. We have schedules on top of schedules, and we come to the point of overemployment, which is jumping from one task to another and actually performing less than would otherwise be possible. So we're doing so much it becomes unproductive. One of the passages that really stuck to me in bold here is how Linder described people now die of stress instead of starvation. Deaths are caused by high productivity, not low productivity. So we're totally reaching opposite extremes, which I find very interesting. We have to ask ourselves if this is a problem of mentality. As Bertrand Russell states in The Praise of Idleness, we are learning to make twice as many pens in a given time and not to make a quantity of pens in half the time. Consumption is centered upon goods. The modern man thinks that everything ought to be done for the sake of something else, and never for its own sake. Again, the proportion between income and time for other activities will change as the income rises. Hidden maintenance, I think, is also important to discuss. Possessions might take more from the possessor than they gave. If I keep a cow, said Emerson, that cow milks me. For one, it's harder to increase productivity and maintenance. It's easier to brush one's own teeth, change one's own light bulb, and do other little maintenance DIY projects because one of transportation costs of bringing in labor, and it can take longer to find someone to do the service than to actually do it yourself. Products today are made for less maintenance but more replacement. That's simply because it's more productive economically. How we treat our bodies comes into this hidden maintenance and our scarcity of time. Even though our bodies are irreplaceable and should be highest priority, we sleep less, we eat faster, we exercise less, when we could choose healthier options, but really they take more time, which is the problem. I also want to mention with hidden maintenance, this includes whenever we're making purchases, we rarely think about the time it will take to care for the product. Say, when you're getting a pool, you're thinking about the kids and the floaties and the barbecues, but you're not thinking about all the time it will take to clean and maintain it. Same goes with like a pet. People rarely think about how much time it takes to care for one. Decisions. As incomes rise, less and less time is devoted on average to each decision. We have to realize that decisions also take time too. Rationality can be classed into the knowledge of alternatives, and you can order your preferences of your choices. But we're not rational because we don't have the access or time for complete information. There will always be a degree of uncertainty. And as income rises, the cost of acquiring information, which requires time, increases. So it's better for us to make the occasional mistake than spend a long time making the decision. For example, I see more impulse buys today and less shopping lists. So we have to think in the future with more and more scarcity of time as the busier we get and the higher our incomes become, we must assume our decisions will be made with less and less information. This brings us to advertising. Advertising is a cause of, and not a result of, a declining quality of decisions. People can be made victims of persuasion not because they are irrational, but because they are rational. Although advertisers can exploit the information gap, the purpose is to cut down on the recipient's information cost. One actually wants to be influenced by advertising. Juggling act. Here's a few quotes that I really liked. Time devoted to enjoying different consumption goods is as essential in the consumption process as the goods themselves. One may possibly buy more of everything, but one cannot conceivably do more of everything. Many people have surely made the mistake of acquiring different articles without reflecting that it takes time to use them. Scarcity of time is one reason that we've become a multitask culture. We try to pack all these things we consume into one setting and one thing. Think of an evening where you can combine all these different activities of drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette, sipping wine, reading a magazine, listening to music, and entertaining guests. It's all of these different activities combined, and we're not stopping to enjoy each thing for itself. Nowadays, the pleasure of eating, once was at the dinner table, is improved by watching TV. We're combining our consumptions. It's all the material things we have: a TV, the house, the car, books, the pool, etc. The total time spent in using all these things increases, but time allocated to each is declining. So many things are competing for our time where some won't be used at all. Will there always be economic growth? Will there come a time in the future where we've created everything we could possibly need or want, where we're completely satisfied and the economy comes to a standstill? There's a couple theories on this. First is of forced, the end of technological progress, meaning there's no more possible inventions we could come up with, or natural resources. We've used it all up and we haven't came to there's no other option. We have to stop there. The second theory is voluntarily, meaning the end of wants. We come to the conclusion that we have all that we want. Psychologically, we're completely content in not having any more things. So we're thinking about the consumption maximum. A quote, "We have come to dislike ultimate success. Dissatisfaction with one's material conditions is regarded as the stimulus of life. Our hopes and ambitions are tied to material progress." So throughout life, it's really hard to measure success sometimes in pretty much any area. And I think for financial and success and proving to others, material progress is an easy measure, because whenever you get a new car or a new house, of course people are going to be like, "You've grown a lot, you're doing a great job," and you can clearly see that. As for whenever you're growing internally in mindset and you're gaining all this wisdom, it's a lot harder to prove or show outwardly to the world. Linder comes upon a third theory of consumption maximum, not of supply or demand, but of time. The limit doesn't have to be set by resources or consumer needs, but of consumption time. So he doesn't think that this consumption maximum will be the end with technological progress, natural resources, or we simply not wanting more, but we come to the point where we have all these material things in our life, we can't fit anything more, because we think of drinking coffee. We've discussed how it takes time to drink coffee. So whenever we have all these coffee, air quote, activities, watching TV, social media, sports and exercise and eating, all of our activities, all this consumption, we fit it in tightly as possible. There will become a point where things start to have no utility. Things get pushed in the closet and not used, not because we don't want to, or we have other options of consumption, but simply because we don't have the time for it. Economic improvement comes in this way to be regarded no longer as a means to a goal, but a goal in itself. we're more inclined to see things in purely economic terms. A quote by Harrington that was in the book: "They accept the poverty because it provides them a certain freedom. As one writer brilliantly described them, they reject the working world because it does not give them time. Perhaps it is more significant to remember that our affluent society contains those of talent and insight who are driven to prefer poverty, to choose it, rather than to submit to the desolation of an empty abundance." I think about poor countries in economic terms and how the people are very hesitant to become like Americans and our way of life. And I do see where they're coming from. They want to keep their sacred traditions alive, and they have time. They might not have all the things and choices we do. At least they're happy because they have time to spend with people and prioritize their lives. It comes down to our choice if we're going to change anything or how we approach this scarcity of time. It must mean the change of heart of the individual rather than a change in the political system of society. A couple food for thought or observations I had while reading. I have 4 questions here. 1. Should we choose to be poor, or how to be conscious of increasing scarcity? 2. More routines because less decisions? I wonder if we get into a routine not because it's what we actually prefer, but it's what we're used to, which means that we're making less decisions, which is saving time, and if that's the right way to do things. 3. What is the government's role in information gathering? The more that the government or businesses themselves are more transparent about their products and how we choose what to consume, it means less time on our part. 4. Should we set material limits in our lives? To tell a short story, I was at the store a few days ago, and I needed to get one of those slicers to cut apples before this recipe that I was making. And then as I was walking down the aisle, I came across this mini cute little red single serving like waffle maker. And I was like, man, I've seen all the Pinterest recipes for making healthy waffles, and I've just thought about getting one of these forever. And it was only $10. I mean, $10, come on. And I got it. And ever since I walked out of the store, I've been thinking, is there ever going to become a point where I say I'm done? That I don't need any more kitchen appliances or any consumption good? Or will I always be on the race to get that new thing? Will I always go across the aisle and say, man, I've thought about this for a while. I deserve this. I have the money for it. Why don't I save myself a little extra time? Maybe I'll become more like the Amish or the Mennonites, where they set material limits. And it doesn't have to be in a radical way. I could just say, like, these are the kitchen appliances I need. And if a new thing comes out, if there's like a no oil skillet or getting an air fryer, but maybe I'll set with myself and say an oven, a microwave, a toaster maybe. That's all I need. And I need a knife. I don't need these fancy slicers or choppers. And deal with what I have and just prioritize my time that way. It's not even the fact that I have the money for these things. It's what's the point of consuming? And is it really good for the environment, for the world, for my mentality to fill my life up with these things? Anyways, I want to say thank you anyone for watching. I've really enjoyed this book, and I'm curious on reading similar books like it. You can see on my last slide further reading For me, I have a couple chapters into the affluent society. I probably will finish that and it'll be my next YouTube video, but I have another options that were mentioned by Linder in his book. Please let me know in the comments any suggestions or thoughts you may have about this or economic philosophy, possible future videos, and focuses. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great day.